Gather around, freaks. It's Monday, which means that we're here on a day when it's not normally the day that we do it, which is frightening and spooky. And the last pages are closing in the book, and the pages are getting jammed back in to that little compartment at the front of the book, you know, like the sleeve of the jacket. We just tuck them back in there and hope that nobody noticed that they fell out and smeared
Never noticed this
ectoplasm.
sleeve before on this book. I've been looking at this book a lot the last month. I never noticed this sleeve. Thanks for pointing that out.
It magically appeared through sheer will, and you know.
Oh god, the sleeve just bit me, bit my fingers.
It's a mimic. Oh god. It's hey. Did you see this one?
With its covers tightly sealed and nightmares lurking within, the ancient book stirs ominously, whispering of unspeakable horrors and twisted sacrifices that have plagued the brave souls who dared to peek inside. But beware, for one of our sinister hosts has made a ghastly discovery. As the yellow pages were last turned, a malevolent truth unraveled. Pages are missing, each one leading to a dark realm far more terrifying than the tome itself. A place where madness reigns, monstrous abominations lurk, and mayhem consumes all who venture too deeply. This chilling revelation serves as a stark reminder that monsters manifest in a myriad of forms. And Hey, Did You See This One? Invites you to brave the darkest corners of mind, matter, and mystery in search of the Grimoire of Familiar Killers. Lost Pages.
What's up, all you freaky, sloppy goopsters?
Hi.
It's Monday night, and you know what that means. We're here, and it's weird. We're finishing out the Grimoire Lost Pages month because, as we've talked about the last couple of weeks, I messed up and double booked, so we had to push the episode till now. I wanted to make sure we got Mark back on the show. It's episode 145, which is spooky too. We've been doing this for quite some time, which it also means it's season 2, episode 45. We have one more theme, and then we're going to cross over into season 3. We got lots of stuff planned for that. We don't. It's all going to be pretty much the same. It's just sort of everything that we've come up to and put together up till now will sort of fully be realized in a new era. But before we get to all that, we are closing the grimoire once again. Like we said in the intro, those pages are jammed back in haphazardly. We're covering The Frighteners tonight, starring Michael J. Fox and a whole slew of other actors and people of the era. And I'd like to welcome back to the show star of stage and screen, Mark Nocent. Mark Nocent, thank you for coming back.
No problem. My pleasure, guys. It was fun last time. I'm sure it'll be fun again.
No, we specifically are not going to have fun.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I'm going to have fun, Jason. You can not have fun if you want to. Good Lord.
No, it's actually funny you mentioned the fun because when we set out to do this month, we wanted to do 4 like one-off slasher films. And what we ended up doing is Nightbreed, which is just, I don't fucking even know what to call that thing. And then 3 horror comedies, fully by accident. So it's funny that it ended up like this. Well, I mean, like I feel like when we originally pitched the idea, we were going to do like other franchises just with smaller amounts of movies. Like I think Hellraiser was brought up as one of the first movies we wanted to do. And then we're like, but there's like 9 of those. So let's save that for when we actually need a new thing to cover in the actual Grimoire. But yeah, we ended up doing 4 very odd films. And we're rounding it out with the 1996. I would say it's closer to horror than comedy. It's a horror movie with some very funny elements happening and some very weird sort of conceits that you don't see in a lot of films. I'm gonna give you a little spoiler of my end of the show review, but this movie is kind of ahead of its time in a lot of ways, in my opinion, and we'll get to that as we get through the show. But I'm going to make a sting for this. But Mark, I've decided that since the guest goes first pretty much for everything, we're going to have the guest do a short synopsis of the film. Don't feel too much pressure. Just a short synopsis. Just, tell us what happens in this movie briefly.
Following centered on the exploits of a shady paranormal doctor, I guess, like sort of a Ghostbuster. We unravel the mystery of some mysterious deaths in a town, and walk our way through the afterlife and how that works via some paranormal kind of tomfoolery, if you will. And yeah, is that like a log line, or I guess it's
I would say
a plot, but
that's you don't have to cover the whole, you don't have to give the whole plot, but yeah, that's essentially what this is. Is there anything you want to add to that, Steve? I think that's pretty good.
That's pretty accurate. I mean, yeah, in terms of plot, it's a con man who is using the recently dead as well as not so recently dead in order to make money by sort of not stalking the bereaved, but, taking advantage of the bereaved in order to make them think that their houses are haunted by their recently deceased family members, in which he uses his ghost pals to make them seem like their house is haunted. And then he does sort of like a fake exorcism sort of thing. But in doing this, he gains the attention of people that maybe he shouldn't be gaining the attention of. And we also reveal that, his wife has died in mysterious circumstances. And then more deaths are revealed to be similar to her death. And he starts to see numbers on people's heads, which turn out to be numbers by a death-like entity. But it turns out to be a serial killer in disguise who's serial killing from beyond the grave.
From beyond the grave.
And we have a showdown with this death, this Reaper, I guess. He dresses like a Grim Reaper, but he's not really a Grim Reaper, I suppose. But he is. At the same time, he is a Grim Reaper.
He is kind of.
I don't know. It's kind of hard to pin down. This one is a weird one to try and give a synopsis of stuff because so much stuff happens in this movie.
Yeah, this one was a weird one. I just threw a dart at the wall for the Home Alone of it all as well, because there's many moving parts in this thing. It's a basic story, but it's got a lot of like segments that could be their own little thing. It'd be a cool show. They could turn the Frighteners into a TV show now, I think, which is part of what I'll be talking about later. But perfect. Do you guys want to talk about your brief histories with the old film The Frighteners?
Oh, a brief history.
And to keep it rolling with the guest goes first, put you on the spot again, Mark. Give us your brief history with the movie, and let us know how you feel about it.
I have no history with this movie. I think upon watching it, at one point I was confused which movie this was. Like, not what movie it was that I was watching when I watched this movie for this episode, but I thought this.
Well, I mean, Jason thought it was another Back to the Future movie, apparently.
Well, I thought it was like
Back to the Dead.
What's that movie where they're like, is it the Frighteners? No, the Frighteners. It's another one, like Lost Boys or something.
Oh,
I don't
right.
know why I confused it with that. Maybe it's the blonde guy.
It's
or
not
like
Screamers. It's not Hackers. It's not. There's another movie that has a similar title to this that I sometimes confuse it with in my mind.
And do they die and come back to life in that movie?
Well, there's that one. There's that one movie where they kill themselves to they get so close to death that it's like a drug, and they made a remake of that, and that's
that one.
Yeah, it's called Flatliners. It's Flatliners.
There we go.
This was like.
I think they also have like a.
He's not in this movie, is he? Like,
Is Jake Busey in that movie?
It has a similar font for the poster, I believe. Like if you were to go through a Blockbuster in the past, you could easily rent the wrong one.
Right. Right. So that's an artifact of confusions past, I think, that remains in this movie.
Oh, that has Kiefer Sutherland and Kevin Bacon and Julia Roberts.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen that one either, so I was like, could be either of them. I don't know.
Cool. How about you, Steve?
This movie was on a lot on TV when I was a kid. I don't think it did particularly well in theaters. Actually, in fact, I know that it didn't because I looked it up today. It did really poorly. And usually when movies do that poorly, they go to TV hell where they're played over and over and over again because they're dirt cheap for television companies to play. They just kind of like rent them for a bit and then play them every weekend for 5 years. So this movie was on a lot on TV. I watched the director's cut today, and it was on when I was young enough that it was actually frightening to me. So I would change the channel when things got too spooky. So I don't know if I've ever kind of like sat down and watched it in its entirety as the director intended to. I know I've seen it since watching it as a kid when it was on in chunks on TV, but I don't really have a solid memory of that. But I do have many memories of putting on like Showcase or something and seeing Michael J. Fox, slightly older than I'm familiar with him from the Back to the Future movies, being like, what is this movie? And then realizing it's a horror movie and then getting immediately scared at the idea of just being near a horror movie. That's how I was when I was a kid. If something was labeled as a horror movie, I was just already scared. I'm like, oh no. What am I doing to myself here?
Oh, Widow Steve.
Yeah, I was so scared of everything. But yeah, that was my first time watching was under the blankets in my tiny little television in my room and being like, I'm gonna freak myself out. I know it. And I was right.
That's it's funny that was your exact experience with it, because that's my exact experience with it as well. To the point that like I would put it on, and as soon as the tension started to grow a little bit, and I'll tell you, there are moments in this that as an adult are just comical, but I could see catching that part as a kid and being just like mortified and terrified by it. I would very much see that it was on the channel 8 or whatever, be like, Michael J. Fox, go to it and start watching it and be like, oh, cool. It's like kind of like a Ghostbusters-y kind of a thing. And then, like Steve said, like as soon as any horror element started to show itself, I would be like, nope. Or I would also be like under the covers watching like this. I've never seen this movie all the way through until until yesterday, basically. And it was weird seeing all these parts I remembered out of sequence in a particular new sequence. And it's still got that bizarre, it's not just that it has horror elements. It's that the way that Peter Jackson like shot this movie is like jarring. There's a lot of weird shots that are just like make you feel like he managed to do like Dutch angles without doing Dutch angles. Almost, he just used these like weird like slow and then fast zoom ins to just really, I don't know, makes me feel really, really weird. And it made me feel real weird as a kid, and watching it over the last couple of days, it kind of solidified as like a movie I want to watch again and have sort of around. It'd be a good Halloween movie to watch with friends, I think. But yeah, that's pretty much, I think we all have a similar kind of a similar history with it. And it's one of those movies too that I thought was a lot more prevalent for people. But it turns out it's kind of a perfect movie for this discussion format, because I think we all were aware of it. Mark thought it was Flatliners. Thank you for not watching Flatliners. Although now I don't want to watch Flatliners for the show, because that I was just looking at the cast, and that cast is insane, and it's like 1990s, so they're all like relatively young too.
Right.
Baldwin in it as well, and Oliver Platt. Cool. So I guess we should talk about the director a little bit, because we haven't.
All right. Quiet on set. Are we rolling? Okay, let's shoot this piece of shit. Sound, speed, action.
We're gonna start, like using the sting to cut you off for that one.
Yeah,
I guess we should talk about the director. He's pretty probably. Yeah, all right. Shut up. shut up.
But as I was saying, omniscient director in the Sting, we've never talked about Peter Jackson on the show, because I don't think either his movies are too like small and niche that we haven't gone to them yet, like Bad Taste or Dead Alive, or they're way too big to do, like Lord of the Rings.
Has anybody here seen Dead Alive other than me?
No.
Okay.
I know that you watched it recently, and it's fucked up.
I mean,
You're bad.
While I was watching it, I was like, I think I have seen this before, and I think my brain refused to like store it, because it was like, this is too traumatizing. You're not allowed to keep this in here. But yeah, it's insane.
I can't. I'll watch it sometime, but I'll watch it on like my third screen at work while I'm working, so I don't have to look directly at it the whole time.
I feel like if you watch that at work, you might get fired.
I might get fired.
Like, what? Jason, this is disturbing.
So the first thing I'll say about Peter Jackson is, like I was saying, like his movies, we haven't covered him before. He's a prolific director who is now mostly known for Lord of the Rings. And I will also point out that he makes a really funny cameo in this movie, where they only show his face for a second. This film was filmed in New Zealand as well. I was wondering what the significance of this like seaside town was, but I think, if I was to guess, they wanted to create a Stephen King sort of style town look. Incorrect. I was a guess. I mean, saying that as a fact.
Sort of correct, but like the reason why they did it is because he wanted to film in New Zealand. He was like, I want to film in New Zealand, and they're like, the New Zealand doesn't look like the United States, and they're like, okay, well, we'll film near the coast, and we'll make it look like a coastal town in the United States, like somewhere that could potentially exist in the United States. So the reason it looks like a Stephen King town is because Stephen King writes everything that looks like it should take place in New Zealand.
Right, and that's what I meant. And I thought that was really interesting when I found out it was New Zealand, because, like Steve just said, there's nowhere that looks like this crazy. It looks like New Zealand once you know it's New Zealand, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I really liked the setting, but that little scene with Peter Jackson walking by was funny, because he's dressed like this like punk rocker, and it's during a very pivotal segment.
He's one of those guys that he's in every one of his movies somewhere. You'll find him if you're looking for him. Basically, it's easier now to spot him. Like when I watched Dead Alive, he has sort of like a pretty impactful speaking role. He plays like a mad scientist, basically. I guess he is a mad scientist, but he's also not a mortician. What's like the autopsy doctor called?
Coroner,
yeah. But he does like the classic nasty thing where he's like eating a sandwich while he's doing his business as a coroner, and he just like leaves the body on the corpse and stuff.
Happens in every single
Um,
movie where there's like a dirty coroner. He's always eating a sandwich.
Yeah, they always have to be eating something inappropriate to be eating around a corpse, which I guess would be any food.
I think so.
So I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Before it's revealed that Peter Jackson directed and wrote this, along with Fran Walsh,
which is his wife.
Robert Zemeckis pops up on the screen as the executive producer. Am I right, or did I imagine that?
Yeah,
You did not imagine that. Actually, Zemeckis was supposed to direct this, but then he said, "You know what, Peter Jackson, someone whose body of work I enjoy, maybe you should direct this." And he was sort of he was championing Peter Jackson to be given the chance to do it, because Peter Jackson, he had directed some stuff in North America at this point, but and for studio work, but he wasn't as prolific as he is now, obviously, where they're just giving him as much money as he wants to make whatever he wants, basically. So yeah, I think he was like, I imagine this is a Zemeckis movie, but you can feel Zemeckis energy in this movie while you're watching it. Peter Jackson does have a style, but it's difficult to pin down unless you're aware that you're watching a Peter Jackson movie. So if it was creditless and you didn't know, you might be like, am I watching a Tim Burton movie? Am I watching a Zemeckis movie? Am I watching a Sommers movie? I don't really know, but Peter Jackson does have sort of like an auteuristic DNA to his movies. And you can even, when you watch this, you can see a lot of the tricks that he does with camera work and musical stings and transitions even are utilized in the Academy Award winning Return of the King. Like when he does like the ghost stuff in Return of the King, like there's a lot of like stuff that he uses in this movie that's in a movie that's won 13 Oscars, so it's like it's so strange to think about that the same sort of like weird early filmmaker elbow grease that he had for this translates directly to something like that.
Moments like that through the movie that I felt were like, there were a lot of like, what do they call them? They're like sort of arm pans where they're like on a jib and they like go and follow a couple of different directions. Like there were a few of those. There were some a little too close-ups where their like nose is like a bit too like close or whatever. Especially in the beginning, I noticed a few of those and was like, oh, that looks like they're in the Shire and proud feet, where his feet are like really big. Like feels like that moment a little bit. And a few others I can't think of, but yeah.
There's one moment where like she's gone to the home to because the woman had been attacked by the ghost the night earlier and had a cut on her or whatever, and it's when the mom is closing the door and she's like, I knew that it was cold-blooded murder, and like it's slowly panning in on her and it's kind of doing the canted angle a little bit, and like the wind is like rustling her and you're like, okay, this is a real like get off the road. Like
yes,
it like totally. Really feels a lot like that, and another thing that like Peter Jackson he always does, which I like, is that he always has an intense opening, sort of cold open to his movies, where there's like a 5 to 10 minute sequence of just something wild happening, and every Lord of the Rings has one, King Kong has one, Dead Alive has one. He always likes to have sort of this disconnected chunk that gives you either something to whet your appetite or just to make you be like, what am I about to watch? This is insane.
Yeah. Which also kind of evokes Ghostbusters a little bit, especially for this thing. It just shows you an example of a haunting that's self-contained. I mean, obviously it's related to the movie later, but it gave me that sort of pang. I know that's not really related. The subject matter for a portion of it kind of is, because he does go in and he kind of does the like, uses this.
Yeah, no, I mean, like a lot of movies do it. It's just that Peter Jackson does it to like a Spielberg level.
Yes, like a crazy,
yeah. Like think about every Indiana Jones movie, right? There's always something, some little like misadventure outside of the adventure that leads into the new adventure in every Indiana Jones movie. That's what Peter Jackson feels like. But yeah, the Ghostbusters movies are a good example because they've made that sort of a staple of their franchise as well. As like, let's show sort of tertiary characters or characters that have nothing to do with the plot being messed with by a ghost or whatever, right?
I like that a lot. As I actually made a note of that. Like, that's really, really tight to do it like that. It really gets you into the vibe of the movie, like what it's going to be, and it's a quick story, right? Like if it's a short story, it's really punchy, so you're paying attention to all of this stuff, and then you kind of start over, so you're like, oh my god, there's more after that, and then you're like kind of on the edge of your seat. I thought it was really good in this movie that they did that. I think it's really, yeah, I guess it just pulls the gears into like third or whatever from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's like the open with a bang in this movie. It's like, no, let's literally open with a bang, like an old woman's gonna shoot a shotgun at a carpet ghost. Like
we're going all of the shotgun shots in this movie, every single one. Yeah. The shotgun's really big, she's holding it like this. It looks so much fun. Bang, and the whole door explodes. Fucking awesome. It's great.
How do you think this movie would be different if Robert Zemeckis had directed it?
It would have had a lot more overly charged sexuality and probably a female character with extreme breasts.
Okay, death becomes her.
Maybe a Toon would show up. Toontown.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah.
No, Robert Zemeckis is notorious for having like just a random character, either they're part of the story or not, and they just have giant breasts for some reason. He does it in all his fucking movies. He's a weird pervert.
My kind of guy.
But I like him.
That's a funny thing I never noticed, but
now you'll never be able to undo this.
That's great, because now I want to go find that in all his movies, because I'm a weird pervert. The Back to the Future connection, though, I feel like this has almost it's almost got like that vibe. And I was thinking while watching it, like if it wasn't a Peter Jackson movie and it was a Robert Zemeckis movie, it would have been more it would have been even more character driven. I think it would have been more following the main character around a lot more, like Marty McFly. And I almost feel like you could do a little theory corner that has like an alternate timeline where Marty McFly ends up, poor and destitute in some half-built house because the doc becomes a ghost.
Oh wow. Yeah,
and that's why I thought Judge was I feel stupid now, obviously, but I thought I was watching and I'm going, that's Christopher Lloyd. Now I'm realizing that now you're going to disagree with me 100% on this, Steve, but I think that John Astin and Christopher Lloyd are kind of have similar acting styles, and that's why I couldn't tell. He was doing almost like I think that
Christopher Lloyd has a very distinguishable voice, and John Astin, that's his name, right? John Astin. He also has a very recognizable voice. So like to me, when I heard him, as soon as I heard him speak, I couldn't tell who he was. He's a fucking ghost with no jaw. Like, how am I supposed to know?
Prosthetics and makeup. I was like, he's talking like this all the time. Like,
it was his eyes that I was confused by.
Yeah.
John Astin, if you don't know, for the listener at home, was the original what's his face?
Gomez
Adams, thank you. From the like black and white.
Well, you know what? At least you got an Adams Family connection there. An Adams Family value, if you.
I got an Adams Family value out of it. Do you want to give us the numbers for the movie, and then we'll go into the body of the episode?
Well, you don't want to go through all of Peter Jackson's filmography and talk about the Lovely Bones and King Kong and all the Hobbit movies and all the Lord of the Ring movies.
I've surprisingly seen like all of his work except for his weird horror from the 80s and early 90s. So
I've seen most of his stuff.
Probably should have seen that by now.
There's actually a couple I haven't seen though. Like I have never seen Heavenly Creatures. I have seen all of his weird horror from the early days.
Did you clock that movie on when they were watching the TV at the start? That movie's on the like thing next to the TV.
What movie?
Heavenly Creatures.
I haven't seen Heavenly Creatures, so I don't know. There you go.
No, in the Frighteners, the movie was. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to because I've never seen Heavenly Creatures.
That's cool though.
Yeah. Anyway, the movie's budget was 26 million. I think it was expanded to more than that because of CGI lack of budget for that, but I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, it only made 29.3 million, but I think that was just box office. So I assume that by now it's probably broken even. It's probably made back its dollar. But yeah, it was not a hit. And I had never even heard of it before I saw it on television either. Like it's not one of those ones where I remember there being any kind of buzz around it or people talking about it when it came out. But it was 1996, so most people were still talking about Jurassic Park a couple of years later. People couldn't get those dinosaurs out of their head. Yeah, that's the budget, and that's the money it made back.
I've seen Meet the Feebles from those first few movies, where it's like stuffed animals doing lewd acts to each other. It's a pretty fucking
okay. So the movie was given an additional $6 million in financing to hire 15 digital animators and computer workstations, so that they could finish 400 shots in time for the movie's release.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I knew I had read something about like the visual effects. They were trying to do them practically, and they just couldn't figure it out. It just didn't look right. Which Peter Jackson is really good at melding the two.
Yeah, you see that.
Really good at,
you see that a few points in this. It looks really, really good.
Yeah, you even the way the death is designed, the ring rates in Lord of the Movies. These are pretty similar, sort of going for the same thing, and we learned those.
Your sound's cutting out a little bit there, Steve.
I'm getting a phone call, but it's coming through my computer as well.
Oh, you got the old Cisco hiss, as they called it in the 90s.
Yeah, just continue while I figure this out.
Yeah, the last thing I'd mentioned was Meet the Feebles, and Steve kept talking about the budget. But the ring wraith and the wraith in this are kind of similar. I do like the addition. So I will say about the CGI that normally movies from this era, the CGI bugs me because it's so dated. But for some reason in this kind of ties into this movie's ahead of its time. It looked fine if you just accept that it all kind of looks the same bad. Does that make sense? Like yeah. it didn't have that weird. I didn't watch it in super high def also, so it didn't have that weird thing where like I watched the first time I saw Fifth Element, I watched this super like 4K version. Oh. So all of the CGI feels like it's like a front layer in the movie. Like it doesn't look like it's in the movie at all. Right. But all of it looks in film in this. There's also a really good part near the end where he picks up a picture frame that has the ghost like trying to pop out of it, and he smashes it, and that's like a practical and CGI hybrid as well, which I thought was like a really good mixture.
Yeah, at the beginning too, she's running from like she runs into the kitchen in this like the sort of first short story, The Cold Open. She runs into the kitchen and one of the doors to the kitchen closes. But you can tell if you're looking for it, you can tell that it's been CGI'd, the door, but you can also tell that it's a practical door. And then the like ghost comes out of the door in the same shot fairly seamlessly for that time period.
Yeah,
I think the special effects in this are great for it being 96. It's like awesome.
Yeah, I think the CGI, but they were still figuring fabric out at that point, right?
Yeah,
like we can do lizards,
right?
Do water,
textures and things.
We can't do cloth. We can't do hair. They still are only just now figuring out hair.
We can do carpet because it's really thick.
Yeah, the thicker the better.
And if it's one still shot of a creature coming through a wall, we can kind of do that too, and it looks fine.
The textures will be perfect.
Yeah.
The shooting schedule for this was actually like super long for most movies. And I think it was like it broke the record of Universal's shooting schedule for a movie of this budget range. But it was specifically because they had to shoot a lot of scenes twice to have the ghosts and the people in similar to like how they would have done with a Roger Rabbit, where they would have like, you know, a person walking around with the props and then have the other people come in afterwards and kind of splice them together. So it was like double for a lot of stuff.
I think as a kid, that was a freaky thing for me to see too. Like the ghost effect kind of messed with me when I was a kid, because I'd never seen anything like it really. Like there's the ghosts and Ghostbusters, but they're all like freaky monsters. But to see like humans in that weird like ghost form, especially the way like that it looks, the way they did it, where they're like, they look wet with ectoplasm. It kind of is just like off-putting.
I like how quickly that stuff's explained. You know, it's not explained in like a, well, guys, you know, I've told you a bunch of times, and then it's just exposition that tells you what's going on with them. It's like, yeah, you're leaking ectoplasm everywhere, man. Like, this is gross. And like, don't do that. And like the jaw is missing, and you don't really understand why the dog has the jaw and why that's important. And then the guy comes in blasting guns. And you're like, what the fuck is happening? But it all like makes sense and tells you about how the system works. Like, the ghost lore or whatever is like why they're ghosts and why they're here and all that.
Ectoplasm is one thing I remembered from when I was a kid, specifically from this movie.
What, the dog?
The ectoplasm element of it. Yeah.
I also like how they establish, you know, like if you get shot in the head as a ghost, you die. It's like, oh, okay, so ghosts can die. That's weird. That's a weird thing. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? I guess it means you either go to the good place or the bad place. They're not really traditional archetypes in terms of like angels and demons and stuff, and they're also not like traditional locations in terms of the biblical sense. It's
hell is like a giant space snake, sandworm.
I mean, it is in the sense that it's like a big pit of fire with a big snake in it, but
some magma cloud. Yeah.
Yeah, and then heaven is just, you know, a blue sky with clouds or whatever.
Yeah,
and everybody
idyllic blue sky plane.
Yeah. So I guess in a way, it's a lot of people's sort of like silly ideas of what those things are, but I like Worm. I like Big Worm. Big Worm was A-okay in my book.
With little worms inside of it.
Death Lake sounds like fucking hell. So that's great. Works for me.
Yeah.
All right. Should we? I guess we've already started to transition into the story. So why don't we just talk about the movie itself? Hey,
the body
of the episode.
The body of the episode.
Yes, friends. Act 1. First, we get that opening scene we talked about. We meet Patricia Bradley being terrorized by malevolent ghosts in her Victorian mansion, and Patricia's mother intervenes, indicating this history of a haunting. And then you kind of swathed over that scene. We get the big haunted house bit, chased around. We talked about the CGI in that element. Was there anything else you guys wanted to add to that before we were introduced to Mr. Frank Bannister?
I liked that setup. It really doesn't answer any questions for the audience. Like, it really sets up a bunch of questions. Like, why can't she leave the house? She is a murderer, but how is she not in jail? Why is this woman such a tyrant? Why are they suspicious of a newcomer? Like, all that shit, you know? I mean, the newcomer part is later, I guess, but yeah, I liked it because it was really off-putting and well cast too. Her mom is like really great, like strict looking, you know, like some boarding school teacher who you were like, oh God, I got this class first today. Fuck.
The Bradley house, as they refer to it.
It would refer to her as a hatchet-faced something or other. I did like most of the casting in this movie. I think is impeccable. Yeah, and that's the purpose of a cold open for me, right? Like, if I'm not intrigued in some way, if I'm not now excited to have more revealed to me about the story, then you're kind of wasting your cold open. If it's just to establish their character is badass, okay, that's fine. But like, you know, take the Indiana Jones example, you know, again, is like it is establishing that he's badass, but it's also setting up your villain that's going to be a through line throughout the movie. It shows that, it shows like what the character is willing to do and how far they're willing to go. It shows a lot of stuff in this movie.
It's got the I hate snakes moments.
Yeah. We learn that he hates snakes. Yeah. But like, I think it's like a perfect example of a cold open. And then this movie, it does an incredible job as well, because it's showing you all these characters that potentially in like the vein of a Ghostbusters, where in those opening sequences, not very often do those characters play any important role throughout the movie. But these two characters are basically the story. They're the important characters that we think are kind of being brushed aside. And then we realize as we're going through, oh no, there's far more importance connected to these two women than you initially think. You think like, okay, this is just showing that the town is haunted, that there's something going on in this town. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with them. So I think you're right. Like its purpose is to intrigue you, and it does a really good job. And the casting is great. The old woman is very scary, but at first I was like, is that the mom from Jaws or the mom from a different 80s horror movie? And I'm like, oh, it's the mom from E.T. It's E.T.
Oh,
mom.
it's the mom
She's
from
here.
E.T. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I had a moment too that was like that, where I was like, this score is really Tim Burton-y. And then the credits roll, it's like Danny Elfman, and I was like, really know that Danny Elfman no matter what. Like any score that he does, he's got like
Nightbreed
3
Strikes
distinct
Again
styles. Yeah.
You can feel
And
it.
this one is more of like an Edward Scissorhands kind of a feel, kind of a vibe to it. And it's perfect for the movie. And I think that it would have been interesting if Danny Elfman went with Peter Jackson instead of with Tim Burton for that like large swath of films. This movie just has.
You want to hear what Tim Burton or Danny Elfman's Lord of the Rings score would be like?
Yeah, I do.
It'd be a lot of trombones and tubas in the Shire.
Right.
You're not wrong. Yeah. You're not wrong. I think I want to hear that. I want to.
Smeagol's theme would be played entirely on an oboe.
See, this is what we need AI for. Like, we need AI for art that no one's gonna do. Like, is someone gonna redo all of the Lord of the Rings score with Danny Elfman style? Like some Instagram guy will do like 10 seconds of something. But like, if somebody wants to listen to the whole movie redone, that's why we plug in AI to that. Right?
Who is Lord of the Rings? It's Howard Shore, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. Oh fuck.
Okay, Chat GPT, give me a score for the whole Lord of the Rings in the style of Danny Elfman, and it just shits it out, and it's fine.
Oh, God.
That's like real.
That's not what I was there. I just wanted to see who the composer was for Lord of the Rings. It's Howard Shore, one of the best musical scores ever written, ever composed on planet Earth.
Howard Shore, yeah.
It's the best.
I will be honest with you guys. Steve knows this about me, but I'm not the biggest Lord of the Rings fan. But I will say that now I
kind of felt that, but I don't know why.
Now that I've been steeped in film for the last 4 years, I think I could go back to those movies and like appreciate them more. If genre-wise, I don't like high fantasy that much. I like it in video game form for the most part, but I find that those tropes, I find them to be played. I'm kind of bored of them. I know it's whatever. It's personal taste. It's lots.
I just giggle because we saw Deadpool and Wolverine yesterday, and I'm like, yeah,
that the most played out fucking
you
tropes ever.
Loved every second of it. I'm like, okay.
It's true. I'm kind of a simpleton when it comes to fart jokes, but I think that I could go back and rewatch like the extended cuts and watch them as a TV series. I can't sit down and do 3 hours of Lord of the Rings all in one go, but I think I could go back and watch it all and really like take it in the way that I take in long form film and get something out of it that way. Because I also like Peter Jackson,
Interesting that you would want to go and watch the extended editions when my impulse was to tell you not to. Go back to the
originals
because they're tighter. They're like cleaner. They're tighter. They're kind of built that way. So it'll feel better and it'll be less of a time investment. I would watch both of them any fucking day, no matter what. But yeah, if you were thinking of trying them again, I would just go with
watch the original theatricals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but
that's
whatever.
It's not a bad idea either.
I mean, if if you're not gonna, they're still very long, no matter which version
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna be breaking them up anyway, then I would say go extended, because there's
Sure.
lots of cool little things in there that, and some scenes are just slightly longer, and you get a little bit more context and a little bit more juice out of that Ghost King. You get some Ghost King juice out of that.
That's right.
Yeah, there's just most of it is like entirely cut sequences that they're just like, we have to lose this whole thread because its entirety is 9 minutes long. If so, we'll just remove 3 things throughout the movie, and that'll give us an extra 9 minutes to play with.
Right.
But there are things that like they then later in like the third movie had to like have a vocal flashback of something that they removed from the first movie for time in the theatrical. So it's like you have Galadriel being like, "And to you, Frodo, I give you the light of Abadgul," or whatever. So that he has like the glowing thing, because they cut out the whole sequence where she gives everybody gifts or whatever, right, from the first movie.
Yeah.
So there are like weird things that they have to. I mean, I don't think anybody who is into the Lord of the Rings movies would have been like, "Where did he get that glowing flask?" They would have been like, "Oh, he just has a magic flask."
They would have been like, "Sweet, that's awesome. I'm so glad he's winning because he has this flask that I didn't know about."
Well, a lot of the people that went into those movies, a lot like the Dune movies, like people already knew the story,
Yeah.
I think that's who the extended cuts are probably for as well, more so. But I'm just like a completionist, that's kind of where that's where my I need to watch all of it or none of it kind of comes from. So I'll do that eventually, and that's why I haven't watched the Rings of Power. I know that it's a prequel, but like we're based off like the books that happened like 1,000 years before. But it's still one of those things where needs to all be there in my head for it to feel comfortable about it.
Oh yeah, don't watch them before you watch the Lord of the Rings again, for sure.
Yeah.
Don't watch the Rings of Power.
But this is, of course, a podcast about the 1996 horror comedy, The Frighteners. And at this point, we are introduced to Frank Bannister, played by Michael J. Fox. He's a former architect turned ghost hunter who we don't necessarily know this at this point in the movie, but he can communicate with ghosts after a car accident that killed his wife. And we're also introduced to the concept that there was this massacre in the town where a serial killer went berserk in like a mental asylum. And we kind of find out later in the movie he was
last week. He has 3 names. I always say a serial killer has 3 names because it just sounds more threatening when you have a middle name. I know most people have a middle name, but like when you're naming a serial killer, you have to always throw the middle name in there as well. It just makes it seem like they're crazier. Like they demand you to say their middle name.
Are you more afraid of Jason Robert Phillips or Jason Phillips?
Jason Robert Phillips.
Jason Robert Phillips. I this is a new paradigm. Like learning that 3 names is scary. This is weird.
It's like there's like a unhingedness to it where it's like you're not sure which one he prefers, and if you say the wrong one, he might serial kill you. So, if I get his name wrong,
serial killer gimmick. That's a serial killer gimmick. Anybody that doesn't say his middle name, doesn't say the Ray and Charles Lee Ray, fucking turns into a killer doll and cuts your head off. But the serial killer is played by fucking Jake Busey. 1996 Jake Busey is as scary as 2024 Gary Busey, in my opinion. His acting in this movie is so fucking crazy.
Oh yeah, it's wild. It must be so much fun to play that role. God.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely like they just let him do whatever he wanted to. Like they were like, just be crazy. They must.
I think this is the second movie we've done that's had him in it.
Yeah,
right?
Starship Troopers was the other one.
Oh right, he is in that. Fuck.
Yeah.
Also, it's not as crazy in that. He's not as crazy, but he is a fucking dickhead in that.
Yeah,
he's a little bit of a creepy weirdo. But he plays the violin, a weird futuristic clear violin, and it's quite cool. Nice. We also get like we get sort of like the even in the 90s, like the husband character. What's his name? Ray.
Or Robert? Was it Ray or Robert?
I think it's Ray.
Ray, yeah.
But he's like he's kind of like a mixture between Michael Bublé and Biff Tannen from the Back to the Future movies.
I got the Biff
Calling him
Tannen.
We're gonna call him Biff Bublé.
Biff Bublé. Nice.
Biff Bublé. And then you're like already kind of like, oh, this guy's a little bit of a douche. And then when he runs over his gnome and he's really upset about the gnome, I'm like, is he a douche? And I'm like, yeah, he's still a douche, but he's concerned about his gnome. Maybe that means he has like some sort of sentimental attachment to things that maybe he's not as much of a douche as I thought. And then it cuts to him later working out while lecturing his wife about stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, even in the like middling 1990s, a man working out while telling a woman how they should feel is just as disgusting.
Oh my God. And how he does part of that too, where he's just like fucking points at her and she stops talking. And then he's like, oh, now I want to like have sex with you. It's like,
yeah, he's like, the tiger needs his fucking disgusting words that he says after that. I also thought when Michael J. Fox first crashes through that fence across the lawn and kills the garden gnome, I thought he was going to be a insensitively played like gay person. Like that's the vibe I got off the actor at first, off the character at first. Well, I mean, you know, it's the 90s. He's got a white picket fence and a nice lawn, and he cares about his garden gnome. I thought it was going to be
people didn't exist in movies at this point.
Like, what's he wearing? Teal and purple pantsuit?
Yes, he's dressed very nice.
Yeah.
That's a thing about this movie in general that we haven't really talked about yet, but the whole color, like the swath of color in this film for being a horror movie, it's very colorful. It's unlike anything that we've covered on this show as far as horror movies go, because they're always like damp and dark and sticky. Like horror movies, especially from the 80s and 90s, are always very like, they look like black and brown and gross, and it's nighttime and it's raining. But in this, there's like a lot of daytime stuff. I know, Steve, you like the daytime horror. It's a very colorful at times. Like, look at the poster behind you. There's a lot of like purples and blues, light blues, neons that happen in this. And I think this
was an image drawn in the year 2020, so it's not the poster that came out with the movie.
No, absolutely, you're right. But like, I just mean, those are the colors. That's kind of the color palette that the movie sort of has. When they're in that,
it's
in
like
the mansion,
like ramped saturation, where like they go to that weird restaurant later on that's sort of like a pirate medieval times restaurant, and like everything is super colorful in there. Like, but even just like the greens and stuff of the New Zealand sort of landscape around them it's powerful, and you know. It is weird that it's filmed in New Zealand, but I'm kind of glad that they did it because it added an otherworldly nature to the movie where it had this picturesque skyline at all points that is reminiscent of like that movie Toys that we did, where it feels unnatural the way it's so green and how it just seems to go on forever. It contrasts with the blue sky and stuff, and they took this little town and they tried to Americanize it as much as they could. And I guess if you're not familiar with what New Zealand looks like, you could be like, I guess this passes for wherever it's supposed to be, but I don't really know where it's supposed to be. But it does make it seem a little bit more fanciful, which I appreciate, like a Tim Burton movie or something where everything is a little bit too colorful and cartoonish to a degree.
Which it makes it feel like, at the very least, you can't really put your finger on it, but it's unique. Like, it's a shot from this movie. You're like, oh, I know what movie that's from. Like, it doesn't look like anywhere else, so it's got to be the Frighteners because it's a baseline. It's unique compared to other movies. It's
like you're having a dream about Maine,
right?
Because I was like, it looks like Maine, but the hills don't go that high in the eastern United States.
Yeah,
and I was like,
and that's not to say
Newfoundland.
And that's not to say that like New Zealand doesn't look real. It's just like when you see New Zealand, you're like, that's New Zealand. Whereas they've taken New Zealand and they've stapled a bunch of like Americanized infrastructure into it to make it look like an American town. And actually, Weta Workshop, the physical Weta Workshop, not the digital. I believe they helped Peter Jackson with Dead Alive because that's a period piece where they transformed a ton of the New Zealand town they were filming in to be era accurate to like the 1940s, I think it was. I don't remember the exact year that it was set in, but the movie actually ended up like winning all these like awards and getting government funding and stuff, because it's like, oh, you're recreating the town as it was, and you're doing it with such accuracy. They weren't just trying to make it look a little bit like the 40s. They're like, no, we're going to recreate this entire town.
Sweet.
So they're like, we can do it again, but we'll just make it look like America. And they did a good enough job.
That's great. Yeah, so as I had mentioned previously, Frank uses his ghost abilities to run paranormal investigation business. Where he what?
It's a scam. It's not a business. It's a con. He's a con man.
But here's the thing that I forgot about. I forgot how this all went down. So I knew that it was a thing where he like pretends to haunt houses to go in and like scam them out of money. But there's this video game. Tell me if you remember this video game for the Sega Genesis in the 1990s called Haunting, starring Poltergeist. And the whole premise of the game is you're this guy who's like a ghost. You're in this rich house. It's kind of like the Beetlejuice house. And you're going around. You can interact with items in the house and make them haunted. And there's a meter at the top that like goes up. And you win the level by scaring the shit out of the family. And then if you don't scare them in time, you get sent down to like hell and have to like fight your way out of hell. That is what I always thought this movie like was more of, but really he only does the haunting like twice, because the first time he does it, at this point he tricks the lead actress and the husband. He comes to the place, he does this little song and dance, he does this little like fake Ghostbuster song and dance with the old-timey radio with the little compartment on it that he like squirts holy water.
So weird, like
I love that
modified toaster or something. You know, he's like, I've modified this toaster to cook for 5 minutes and then spit out a little weird like seed bag of whatever's inside of it.
I love Michael J. Fox in this movie. I love Michael J. Fox in this movie because I like Michael J. Fox anyway. He's got a very natural sort of way of being. But the way that he said it's holy water about his gun is like, it was like perfect. I burst.
He branches the gun though, like he like pulls out.
The way he's like,
she's like, oh my god. He's like, it's holy water. Like it's nothing.
Yeah, it's holy water. And it's like where just the amount of squirting he does and where he's squirting it is so fucking funny. Like,
oh yeah, and
he like goes in, he opens the fridge and squirts into the fridge, and then closes it and like waits a beat, and then opens the freezer and starts squeezing the freezer. I'm like, oh my god, this is so good.
The little buzzer sound that it makes when it.
Yeah.
But what we learn is it's actually he's got this group of ghosts because of what I mentioned before, that he can see ghosts and they can help poltergeist up a house, so they kind of work with him. Now it's kind of unclear, like they never really explain like why these guys and why they help him, and why when he goes to like the graveyard later, like the rest of the ghosts are just like fuck off, you know. Like I never really clocked the why of it all, but I don't know if it necessarily matters. It's a very cartoony conceit gimmick kind of a thing going on. So did you guys get anything out of it that I may not have? Steve, I know you watched the director's cut. I don't know if we can really contextualize what you had in your movie and we didn't.
I don't think there was a lot of extra content in the director's cut. In some cases, the director's cut is shorter than the
right.
Doesn't always mean there's like an extra whole scene in there.
What was the runtime for the director's cut?
I think ours was like an hour 45.
But mine was 202.
202 is what I had as well.
Oh, so I guess I had a shorter version.
Yeah, Jason, you probably also director's cut.
Okay, because I specifically downloaded both, and I was gonna watch the director's cut, and then I thought, you know, I gotta, since we went to see Deadpool yesterday, and it's like a fucking big weekend. I had Super Kicked on Friday, so I just didn't have time to like jam a movie in, and I wanted to, you know, give the movie.
All right, and who gives a shit about this? So what I'm gonna say is,
So fucking mean to me, man. I don't get it.
I don't care about why you watch this. What do you watch the other? I think that to answer your question, the reason that the ghosts at the graveyard are probably like scared of him or mean to him or don't want him there is because they think that he murdered his wife, right? They're like, we don't want you here because you're the person that like sends people here, right? Like, fuck you, you're not allowed to be in here. That's how I thought of it anyway. But when it comes to why the other three are hanging out with him, I don't really know. It seems like he's promised them something because like they're constantly being like, I want new clothes or I want cigars. And it's like, you can't even smoke cigars. And he's like, you could smoke them and blow it in my face or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I guess. But like, yeah, it is a little bit unclear why they're hanging around with him unless there is like some sort of like glossed over dialogue between them all. Because there's a lot of exposition that goes on between these three in a very short amount of time where you're like, okay, we learn a little bit about who they are and like when they died kind of thing. Like we know, I mean, we could probably tell from the one character that he died in the 70s just based on what he's wearing, but like,
right.
Like,
I theorized
need for him to be like, you died in the 70s. That's what you wear now. I'm sorry.
I theorized that Stewart was beaten to death because of the markings on his face. He was probably a nerd who was beaten up by a greaser. And the gunslinger, well, he was called the judge and he was a gunslinger. So I assume he died in a gunslinging accident.
Some sort of gunslinging accident. He was slinging his guns way too hard and he accidentally slung those guns to himself to death.
Yeah.
Cyrus, it's also kind of unclear how he died. He just seems like, I don't know, because some of the ghosts have very discerning features as to like how they died. You're like, oh, this guy got his throat slit or whatever, but yeah, I couldn't really tell.
So Cyrus is the guy with the afro, right?
Yes.
It says my notes. It says 1970s gangster, but he's clearly dressed like a disco guy. So I figured it was like Overdose or something. If I had to theorize,
he does have platform shoes on and like bell bottoms, but he's just kind of wearing like what you would think of a stereotypical person in the 70s would wear, like a disco stew outfit.
Stew outfit, exactly.
Yeah, it's basically what he's wearing. But so yeah, I guess Overdose. He should have had some cocaine in his mustache.
Exactly. That's what I kept looking for. But he was the first person I noticed to have the ectoplasm like prominently. So I was like, did he drown? Because he's got the wet eyes and the wet mouth. Yeah. But then I noticed that as time goes on, the ghosts get wetter and wetter with ectoplasm. So I don't know, man.
Well, when Ray shows up, he's super gooey, and I think it's because he's so fresh, right? Like, isn't that a thing where it's like your ectoplasm is you spend about a year just oozing, and then it starts up a little bit, and then what's the judge is saying? He's like, my ectoplasm's all dried up,
all gone. All dry. Guts, like he's just spine in the middle, like he's lost all of his bowels.
Yeah. So I guess you can die of old age as a ghost as well. It is an interesting concept. Like it seems like a fun thing to sit down and be like, let's create some rules to this. Like, we're gonna have it so the ghost can die. Okay, cool. What are the rules of ghost dying? You can kill a ghost if you shoot him with a ghost gun. A ghost can die of old age because their ectoplasm dries up. Also, you can I guess that at one point Ray gets like his face ripped off and they turn into like weird crystals. And
like the crystal with the like light coming out of the face was a really interesting like moment.
Yeah. And it's like, is that Ray's ghost's death? Like, do we see him? After because I don't think he recovers.
He died. Right? No, I don't recall seeing him again after that. Yeah. He's also outstayed his welcome at that point. It's like, all right, Ray, you've kind of like gone as far as you can go.
Well, all I could think about was if Ray exists for the rest of Frank's life, then he's obviously going to get with the lead woman. So you're just going to have this like ghost dude hanging out with him the whole time. Yeah. And then at the end, spoiler, she ends up with the ability to see ghosts too. So they're just like trying to have this new romance, and just the ex-husband's just there.
Get out of here, Frank. I told you it's over. Yeah, way to bang my wife, John.
You're doing it wrong, buddy. She doesn't like that.
You're doing it wrong. She doesn't like that. But as we know, he knows absolutely nothing about his wife because he goes to the dinner and he's like, we always have red wine. And she's like, oh, let's get some white. I fucking hate red. And he's like, what? The fuck?
He's so mad at her.
There's a series of mysterious deaths happening in town, with the victims showing signs of heart attacks. And Frank, this is where we see Frank witness the number carved into the forehead for the first time, and he suspects something supernatural. Like, you think you can see ghosts, bro. We're also introduced to Lucy around this point.
It's quite effective though, like just
Yeah.
because it's like it's effective for both him being scared, but also like it's effective for us as the audience because we're like, he can see fucking ghosts. Like, he knows that essentially magic is real, and he's seeing something that's even making him go like, what the fuck? So as an audience member, you're also like, what? What? Tell us, Frank. I'm concerned. I want to know why this is frightening to you. So I don't know. I think in a lot of ways this movie, it does stuff that I haven't really seen before, and if I have, it hasn't been done in a very compelling way. But this movie is pretty compelling, and it grips you right from the start. And then as soon as that sort of grip wears off from the opening cold open, you get something new that grips you again. You're like, oh, this is a mystery. And then you start to understand, oh, this isn't just a mystery, it's a murder mystery, but the murder victims are ghosts. Like, this is fucking sick. I love this. So there's a murder mystery going on where like people are dying in the town of mysterious heart attacks, but when they do autopsies on them, their hearts are being crushed inside their bodies, right?
Their arteries are being
there's
like exploded. Yeah.
Well, he says their arteries are completely clean as a whistle, because he's like, there's no way these people are having heart attacks, because when they cut them open, their arteries are clean as a whistle. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them, but it's almost like something was squeezing their hearts under like a crazy amount of pressure and then letting them go. So this guy is just actually squeezing their hearts to death. But then we also get ghosts being murdered, which is, also scary for the ghost community in the graveyard. Run by the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket.
And Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Imagine being typecast as a drill sergeant.
He's a drill sergeant. Yeah. When I saw that guy here, I was like, is this for real? This is that guy. This is that guy. Holy shit. And he's in it for a long time. It's not just like a one-off. You hear him barking something and he's like, yeah, and walks away. They get in a fight like twice. It's great.
The sound design on those machine guns is out of control.
Feels good.
It's so good. But he just as a person was typecast for decades as this character. Like, he would just come back basically playing the same character in a ton of the things that he was in, which, I'm not really mad at it, because if you're good at what you do and people want you to do it on screen, then do it, man. Pay your kids through college. Yell at the camera.
It's an era though where actors were particularly afraid of being typecast. It doesn't happen as badly now unless you're, you're gonna be a mother forever, which happens to a lot of women actors. But
or you're a guy with a big scar or something like that.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But in the 80s and 90s, you hear actors talk about not taking roles because they're like, it's too close to the last time I played it. I don't want to get typecast as this or that. And this guy leaned into it seemingly because he did the Full Metal Jacket bit.
The reality of it is that he is an actual drill sergeant,
right? Yeah, that's true.
In a movie, and then he was like, "What do you mean?" It's like, just do the stuff that you do with the soldiers. All right, and he just like screamed for 45 minutes straight or whatever. His name is R. Lee Army too, which is like crazy. Like, that's his real name in real life.
You're like, it would be so nice to know what your destiny was so easily. You know what I mean? Like, you're not like, what is my purpose in life? It's like, well, I'm going to the army. That's where I'll start.
Last name's Army, and my first name is Screams a Lot. So he
Phillips is actually my stage name. I was actually born Jason Robert Podcast.
Then you see, fate has treated you well. Here you are.
It is interesting though, because he's a real actor now. Like, he's been doing it for such a long time that he's had to do roles outside of the screaming, yelling role, and he's been in tons of stuff. So it's also interesting when you see him in something where you think he's going to go off. Like, you guys have seen Seven, I assume. he's in 7. He's like the police chief, and you're like constantly expecting him to go into full Metal Jacket mode in that movie, and he never does. It's like this weird sort of quiet performance where like every time you think he's about to explode, he gets like more insular and quiet and whispery about what's happening. And you're just like, holy fuck. It's wild to see it because you're like, you expect a specific thing out of this guy because you're so used to seeing him do it, and for him not to in a movie where you would expect him to do it is really kind of interesting and refreshing. But it's also fun to see him as a ghost who transforms into a boxer and sucker punches Michael J. Fox. I like that too.
Yes, we love that.
When we're introduced to Lucy, we had already kind of met her, but she contacts Frank after her husband dies. They had met before in the house, the going in and cleaning the house of spirits, and Frank had tried to warn Ray of the danger, but it strained his credibility instead of helping. And then we get that weird scene where Lucy goes to visit Patricia and the mother, and then we get that thing you guys were talking about earlier where they're both like warning her. I didn't really follow what was happening during this sequence because it was so like off-putting. Miss Bradley warns Lucy about Patricia's past involving the notorious killer Johnny Bartlett. Was there more to it than that, or was it literally she just goes up there to check on Patricia and then the mother's like, you better watch out?
She's a
we don't recognize you.
She's like a psychiatrist.
I think what's happening is I think she's realizing that there's something going on here in terms of abuse, where she's like, this woman is being abused and I'm clocking that and I need to figure out a way to get her out of here because of this. And but it's also giving you expository dialogue in terms of the murders in the town and letting us know what's going on to expand upon the mystery of this town, but also give her more reason to want to keep going back there. Right. She's basically being imprisoned, but as we find out later in the movie, for good reason, because she's still dating her psychopathic dead boyfriend who is a serial killer, but she's also a serial killer. She's in on it. And it turns out that everything the mom is saying is true. She's like, yeah, she was definitely part of this, and she's a murderer, and she cannot leave the house because she will probably murder people.
But then my question is, why wouldn't she be safer to everybody if she was in prison? Like, what makes it a better deal if she's in a haunted house? You know what I mean?
The mom says at the very beginning of the movie, I could have her put away whenever I want, but I don't want it. Like, she just doesn't want it because she's her mom, I guess. You know, I don't have kids. Yeah. I don't have kids, but I assume that there's some sort of unnatural connection that you have with them.
With some kind of bond of protective.
Some sort of bond. Supernatural connection, I should say.
Right.
But I think this movie also it's not really designed to be that deep. The information that we get from the film is just what is happening. Like, I don't think you were intended to think about a lot of this too hard, because the second we've done it a few times on this show already, we're all just kind of like, that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
So I think by the end of the movie, the questions that you have as we're talking about it now, you're kind of not concerned about it anymore by the end.
Yeah.
But at this point in the movie, as our discussion goes, like narratively, while you're watching it, this is all meant to be a misdirect.
It's a mystery.
Misdirect.
Yeah. I heard you say misdirect, but also.
Oh, I thought you thought I said mystery.
No, no.
Well, it's there to misdirect you to think that she is innocent and that she is being held there against her will, and we're supposed to be thinking that the grandma character is evil, right? We're supposed to be like, oh, she's the monstrous person. We need to watch out for her. But turns out no, we need her on our side with her shotgun. She's an ally. We need old lady shotgun on our side.
Right, old lady shotgun. No, I didn't mean to talk over you and say a word that sounds so similar, but the movie is also framed like a mystery with misdirects, as you said. And I like the way they do it, because as we're talking through it, you're sort of realizing that they're asking all these questions that don't have answers until it plays out, and by the end you do get a very well-rounded view of what happened in this town. But at this point in the movie, things just keep happening, and it was kind of a confusing adventure, considering I had seen this movie at some point in my life, but I just remembered these weird bits.
Well,
and
yeah, it's been
pieces.
long enough for me that I could not remember much. I just remembered like there's a ghost that's killing ghosts. I remember that much. But
I had a weird wire cross with Donnie Darko, because that thing that light beam that comes down to like take your soul away is kind of like that weird like connective tissue light beam in Donnie Darko.
Oh,
And I thought that was in this. I didn't remember it being like this beam from the clouds that comes down. So there were all these like little like memory artifacts that were just mixed with other movies and stuff, because like I said, and Steve said as well, we saw these movies in bits and pieces through our fingers. So it's
and never all at once until now.
Yeah, I'm an unreliable narrator before watching it all the way through, and even still I don't know, there's some stuff in this movie where I was going like, what? Right, so Frank finally encounters the Reaper, a Grim Reaper-like entity that appears to be responsible for the deaths. I think he encounters it for the first time at the restaurant,
In the bathroom,
right?
Yeah.
In the bathroom, when the old guy, he sees the number on the forehead. He sees the number on Ray's head. He gets killed like off camera. But this is this is after Ray comes back as a ghost. They're having dinner. This old guy is just in there. Frank's acting like a complete psychopath, because he's like, he sees the Reaper wrestling around trying to get to the guy, which was a really funny like physical comedy moment. I always like that. I always like when a like straight man character is seeing a person seeing a ghost that they can't see. Like I like that dynamic. I think that's a funny little thing. Him like crawling around on the bathroom floor and like looking under the stalls and like going into the stall and like hiding behind the little stall corner.
Yeah.
I thought that was good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he realizes that the entity is somehow connected to Johnny Bartlett's killing spree 30 years earlier. Or so.
There's little
does
things.
he realize it's connected at that point? I think what he sees is the number of the guy's head, and then there's like he gets crushed, and then watches the guy go, oh, also we can't walk too far away from this guy's like, great food, eh? And he's like, yeah, it's good. And then like he's like, this guy is acting really weird. And then after he dies, he looks up into the light and he's like, Mom? And that's all he says, and he's just gone. He's like, I'm going if that's Mom. Like, oh, buddy, that's so sweet.
I think what's happening here is that I'm not sure that he's connecting the dots that it's the murders from the past, but he is connecting the dots that has something to do with his wife's murder, because his wife had a number carved into her head when her body was found.
Right.
So he's like, this has something to do with because that's why he's so pissed about it when he sees it the first time. He's like, which one of you guys drew the number on his head? Don't fucking do that. That shit is not cool or whatever. It's because it's reminding him of his wife's murder. Or death. I guess it's not considered a murder at this point. But
no, and that has a huge reveal at the end of the movie, which we'll get to. But at this point, Lucy and Frank research the history of Johnny Bartlett. They basically they discover for themselves what we talked about already, that Johnny Bartlett was basically he's going for a high score, as we kind of learn. It's like, I gotta get the highest kill. Did I do better than that other person?
Oh, I love that.
And Patricia assisted him. She was like in serial killer stories where the serial killer always has that like Stockholm syndrome, or the like, loves the serial killer character.
Yeah.
Happens in real life, happens in movies, when people are in prison and they have fans. It's so fucking weird. But Bartlett's goal was to surpass the record of other notorious serial killers. And I think he like was naming them, but I didn't clock who he was talking about.
He has a line in the first little bit after that really cool transition where it's like narrated by the journalism, like the editor at the press or whatever.
Right.
It's like this the transition there. She's like reading it, and then I guess you see a clip of footage of him, and It's like, I got me a score of 12. Beat that.
Yeah.
Great.
There was all kinds of little like newspaper clippings, and there was that video of him on the screen. They're like documentary they were watching about Johnny Bartlett, which had a really funny moment where at the end it's like, then he got the electric chair, and then it like flashed and made electricity sounds for no reason. I just thought that was such a goofy little
and
like,
I didn't
funny
notice thing. But when you see him at the end in the ghost form, when he's in like his humanoid ghost form, he's got like a fucking shape on his head. And I was like, I don't know what that is. That's a weird, crazy person thing to make up onto his head, but it's the unsponged like headpiece for the electric.
You got a burn.
Fuck, crazy.
He got an electric ring on his head.
Ugh.
Yeah, I think he says like Gacy and we almost beat Dahmer, and then he says like that Russian cannibal says he did 39, so we got to do more than 30. We got to do more than 40 or whatever.
Yeah.
So he's got a specific number in mind for murders.
And it was
I don't know who the Russian cannibal is. I don't know who the Russian cannibal is in terms of like my Rolodex of serial killers in my brain, which is a little dusty. I don't like looking at it that often.
Nikolaev.
Did you just look up a Russian cannibal?
Yeah, is best known of the cannibalism of his victims and of distributing and selling their flesh to others in disguise of exotic animal meat. Ugh. Oh, he's not even the only one.
Giraffe neck meat. I have giraffe neck meat. This looks like a human leg. No, it's giraffe.
No, giraffe. There's also Ishat Kuzakov, who murdered a minimum of 3 male acquaintances in his apartment in St. Petersburg, Russia, and ate them.
A minimum. Wow, they're not even sure.
They're like the 3.
It was at least 3. We found 3 feet, so at least 3 people. Like, it couldn't have been 2. Well, they were all left foot.
They were all left foot. That's fucked up. That's like one of the darker things we've gone into on this show. Oh, gross. So yeah, basically, speaking of fucking gross, it's around this point where we're introduced to the eccentric and obsessive FBI agent Milton Dammers.
Oh my god!
How'd you guys feel about old neo-Nazi, I guess, Milton Dammers, who was also like, I don't know what is.
Talking about Jeffrey Combs, the best actor on planet Earth. I fucking love Jeffrey Combs so much.
He is great.
Anytime
fantastic.
I see him in anything, I'm happy because he's one of those actors that just deserves to be far more recognized than he is, in my opinion. Just based on his filmography and his acting ability, I think that he's like top tier for the movies that he's been in for his entire life. But he's also one of those character actors that someone like Peter Jackson will make a movie and then be like, I'm going to write a character and we have to have Jeffrey Combs be the character. Like he has to, I'm writing this for Jeffrey Combs.
Jeffrey Combs has been in 147 things.
No way.
I think that he's one of those people who will do things if you offer them to him. And he probably has a reasonable rate to be in stuff, but like he also just likes being in things. So he's not going to say, he's been in every Star Trek.
Jackson numbers though. That's crazy.
Yes. He's been in every single Star Trek that's ever been out. Like he plays different aliens. So they'll cast, like he's played a Klingon, or he's played a Ferengi, he's played an Andorian. He's like just always popping up and you're like, wait a minute. Is that Jeff? It's me. I'm back as a different alien this time. But you know, he's of like the Reanimator fame, and Bride of Reanimator was sort of like his big break in terms of being a horror icon, a B horror icon as well. But yeah, it's just, he's one of those people that sometimes you'll be watching a cartoon or something and be like, I know who is this voice? And then you look it up and you're like, it's fucking Combs. He got me again. So
yeah,
I'm a big fan.
He's been in Marvel and DC in the same year. Cartoons. Wow. Yeah, I'm like just looking through his IMDb now, and he's just in so much stuff that I've seen. He was on the 4400, which is a show that it was on for a minute.
I'm sure he's been in every science fiction television show that's ever existed, like in some capacity, if not just like the voice of a computer or something, you know.
Yeah.
Was he in X-Files? Probably.
I don't see it here, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was.
Maybe he had like that was his line. He's like, "I'll never do an X-Files." Like, why not? Like, because it's a bridge too far. I can't do it.
They want to pay me too much money to be in it.
Doesn't feel right.
Right. I gotta keep myself real. Get down by the stay in the dirt that spawned me. You know.
I'd rather play the geek in the film The Wizard of Gore.
The Wizard of Gore.
Yeah, some movie called The Wizard of Gore. I obviously haven't seen it. I just thought those.
So many of these movies. Robot Jocks I've seen. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to go through his entire IMDb because I'll be sitting here being like, "Oh, remember Dr. Mordred?"
Let's just list all of them in a giant list for 5 minutes.
Cyber Stalker. But yes, he's playing a weird FBI agent who dresses like a Nazi, kind of like a weird sort of SS agent. He wears a literal lead vest, not like a lead Kevlar vest. He's wearing wearing a piece of lead on his chest. It looks like a piece of armor that has been smelted out of actual lead. Like it would be so
like
heavy
from an MMO, like from a video game.
Yeah, the way he's acting is crazy. Like he cannot be yelled at by women because he has a problem with women yelling at him, and
that's
he turns
so
into
fucking funny to me, man. Fuck,
it's also so strange. Like it's not like he just gets uncomfortable. He like runs out of the room
and screaming.
Yeah, barks.
There is a thing that happens with this character though, where they sort of level him out throughout his character arc, which I liked that they didn't keep him that level of crazy for the whole thing, but you know that he's capable of being that crazy. So I thought that was a good characterization to do to introduce him as this like all over the place psycho, and then when he focuses in on what he's trying to do, they sort of like normalize it a bit, but they keep revealing stuff about him, like the swastika on his hand. He opens his shirt at one point, he's got all these wounds. It's revealed that he was like a sex slave for like the Bradley family, I think, or some other family.
Yeah, Satan's cult, where he was basically like kept he was like deep undercover. So all these things that he's revealing are all part of him being a deep undercover FBI.
Right. Okay.
It's not like he's not a Nazi. He just went undercover as a Nazi. That's why he has the swastika tattooed on it. It's like you could get that removed, man. But also like it's created so much stress in his life that even before it's revealed, when he's acting, like anytime he's about to sit down, he immediately stands up, and I'm like, this guy's got hemorrhoids. This guy's got fucking horrible hemorrhoids. And then later on, you see later on you see a hemorrhoid cushion, but before that you just like can tell that he has hemorrhoids just based on how his body movement and how he's moving, and he's like giving himself this like discomfort where he can't stand in a certain position for too long. He has to, anytime he tries to sit, he immediately stands up after sitting down. It's crazy how much detail, if you like know it beforehand. You're like, because I remembered the joke from when I was a kid. I'm like, doesn't he have like one of those cushions for when you have a hemorrhoid or something? And then, so I was thinking about that as I was watching it. I'm like, oh my God, this guy is hemorrhoid acting. He's doing hemorrhoid acting. This is crazy.
I fucking lost it, man. He pulled that out and she thinks it's a gun. I'm like, what the fuck is that thing? And he puts it down in the seat. I'm like, holy shit, for real? That's hilarious.
This guy's butthole is swollen.
Another first for this show. That's the most time we've said hemorrhoids. In 1 3-minute segment.
Let's all say it together for posterity. 1,
3, 2,
3.
Hemorrhoids. We've done it. Now I got to put a tag on this that it's an adult content. No, that's a very real fact of life, folks. Don't get it twisted. He immediately suspects that Frank is involved in the deaths, and he believes that he's orchestrating these murders for profit somehow, which like he's not, but it's not too far off considering he's got these ghosts. Like when he first haunts that first house, I was like, how the fuck is he doing this again? Because like I said, I thought he was doing it with like machines or something. I don't know how he would have raised a bed in somebody's house, but they do show that one part where the chicken is walking towards the room, but it's a shadow of it, and they actually show the chicken with a light next to it, so it looked like it was it was rigged up. So anyway, Frank is arrested and later released, and then this is when Frank realizes that the Reaper is actually the ghost of Johnny Bartlett, who continues his killing spree from beyond the grave, and Patricia is revealed to be the accomplice. And then this is what you guys were talking about. This next little bit is it's revealed that Patricia's mother kept her under strict control, fearing her daughter's influence by Bartlett's malevolent spirit. Patricia and Bartlett plan to break his previous kill count record, which was 11, and then it's revealed later in the movie that Patricia puts the 12 on Deborah's head because that's the first time that they actually do a new kill together in that time span. I think.
Isn't it 13?
Was it 13? It was like, because 13 is a nice number for that or something.
Yeah, some lucky number depending
He
on
said,
who you are.
unlucky for some.
Yeah. And then we're pretty much on to the third act and confrontation and adventure portion of the movie. Let me see.
Yay, we've reached the third act.
Welcome to the third act of the episode.
He basically has to kill himself to be able to fight death. But we do have a
So they escape from the prison because his ghost buddies help them to ward off the Reaper, and then they fake. I'm done talking to him now, and then the guard comes by. And they just front kick the door into the guard's head, and then they get out. And then that's their next move is they go, I'm going to have an out of body experience. She's like, I can help you with that. I'm a doctor or whatever.
Yeah.
He puts the gun to his head.
No, wait.
Wait.
She's like, calm the fuck down. We can figure this out before you blow your fucking brains out.
Because you definitely can't come back if you remove the brain from your own body.
Yeah, there's nowhere to go. Right?
I would like to talk a little bit.
Smartest character.
No, I would like to talk about a little bit about how we go from. So they go to that gala because the next kill is going to be there. They see the Reaper on top of the building, or they end up at this gala.
Yeah,
his whole ghost crew's with him. Then Judge kind of saves everybody from the ghost. That's when we learn that the guns work in the afterlife, which was a cool little moment. But then Judge is like, whoa, mama, these sarcophagus ladies, they look real good. And then we get one of the most confusing scenes in a movie I think I might have ever seen in my life, where he has sex with a corpse, which made me wonder, if a ghost bangs a corpse, is it necrophilia?
I can't believe something made you wonder that sentence. Isn't that crazy? What a thing.
I thought you were going to ask some sort of weird convoluted question about is there a ghost baby? Will a ghost baby come out?
Yeah, right.
That's actually my follow-up. And can a corpse get impregnated? No, that's ridiculous, Steve. Come on.
No, that's too far, Steve.
But that was I was just being funny. But I think that that scene being that into the next person after, so one person's already dead when he gets there, but the next person is the head of the newspaper or whatever, and she's been hysterical about this whole situation. She thinks Frank is a straight up murderer, and he walks over to get her to stop screaming about how he's a murderer. He punches her in the face and throws her over his shoulder and takes her to her ultimately her death. And I thought that was the craziest 90s you can't do this whole sequence now. You can't have Judge banging a corpse and then a man punching a woman. I just thought it was the tone of the movie kind of changed for me in this sequence, I guess, is the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah. I think they did a good enough job throughout the movie of making that lady seem like she was a horrible, vindictive monster woman. So
True.
it didn't really
Yeah.
feel bad. It's just like, yeah, it's obviously not good. But I mean, I thought it was. I like a good comedic one punch, you know.
He's also being shot at. Like I also was laughing out loud during the sequence and the following sequences because, oh my god, the difference between then and now. They're chasing a guy who, like, yeah, okay, we don't know is a murderer necessarily. They're firing so many bullets at him.
I thought that was actually a commentary on incompetent police. I was like, you know, is this a point that Peter Jackson is trying to make about American police? that's where my head went.
Right. Okay.
You know, because in the 90s,
maybe, but
police were
like you said, this
viewed...
movie's not that deep.
Right? Yeah.
It's just
but in
for
the
a
90s,
comedic effect.
Police were still viewed as superheroes, so I don't know.
But I mean, also in the 90s, punching a woman was funny. So that's also like, what the fuck.
A ghost banging a corpse was definitely the top quality.
But also, he's trying to save
well.
her, right? So it's like, how are you going to get this person to shut up so you can save their life? All right, I have to just knock them out and take them with me. It's like, it's the easiest thing, and it is kind of like, you know, it is overly cartoonish to the point of being comedic. And then she dies, also still chastising him, like as she's being sucked into the other life, the afterlife. She's like, "You fucking asshole," and she gets like sucked into the ether or whatever. So she's still being rude, even though he was trying to save her. Ultimately failed, but because of her, not because of his own ineptitude.
So the Reaper gets her, and she's number 40.
I can't remember her number.
I know the guy in the bathroom was 30.
It went like 37, 38, 39, 40, and I think that the next one is Lucy, and she's 41, and 41 tiebreaker. Because we're at the end of the movie pretty much. Frank
he goes to jail after that, right?
Yeah.
After when she gets sucked, he goes to it's a pretty funny moment where Jeffrey Combs is like, Jeffrey Combs is in the police station. He's like, well, what do you think? He's like, we're never going to find him tonight. He's too crafty. And then he's like behind him, like as he's like, giving a speech about how he's an incredibly smart man.
He goes back to the police station to basically be like, look, all of the other murders, I might have been at the scene, but it's pretty like, you know, I pretty obviously didn't do it. But the leader of the newspaper, she was in my car after I punched her in the face and kidnapped her, and now she's dead. So I'm just gonna just go to jail now.
Yeah, I'm finished. It's over.
Yeah.
And so then they do the I need to have an out-of-body experience part.
Yeah.
Then they escape. Then they do the out-of-body experience thing, and then they go to the cryogenics lab or like the deep freeze or whatever.
Yeah. And then this is where they do some like classic 70s, 80s science. We'll kill you for 20 minutes or whatever. And it's like, okay,
yeah,
I'm not going to ask too many questions about this. Let's just go. I got to put you in a freezer so your body doesn't start to decompose, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Who fucking cares? I don't really care about the science here. I just like the fact that he's going to be running around as a ghost for a little while without having to murder himself.
Which might have been why Mark was confused with Flatliners, because it's kind of the same kind of idea.
Mm-hmm.
Except for their like I said, they get so close to death that they fucking have heroin orgasms.
Yeah, it's like what is it, DMT? When you get close to death, it's like DMT activates in your brain. Yeah,
you know, you can just buy it in vape form now off the dark web, so you don't have to.
Sounds fucking safe as fuck, man. Sounds great. Like,
listen, dying for real or dying, you know,
for fun,
suffering ego death for fun,
yeah,
and for profit, or going to like a shaman in South America and drinking a mixture of slurry that is DMT.
Sweet, I'm in.
You know. So basically that is the point where they make it to they go to the Bradley house. They kind of have that showdown where he's like alive again. They have the showdown with Patricia and the mother. That's when the shotgun.
We have like We have a moment first where he tracks down the Reaper, and we get the reveal that it's the guy, because we don't really know that.
Oh, right.
At
Yes.
this point yet.
Oh yeah, because he blasts him to smithereens in the graveyard, right?
And he turns into like a pancake face or whatever, and he's like, "How's it going?
Who are you?"
And then
Slam.
and he almost kills him, but then he has to be brought back to life because his body will die if he isn't.
He is defibrillated away from the conflict.
Yeah, and so because they realize who it is, that's when they decide to go to the mansion to ask what's her name for help, the mom from ET. But they don't know that Mrs. Bradley. They don't realize that she is still in love with him and helping him to achieve all of these murders. I don't know what the ultimate goal is. I guess just to be the best serial killers ever.
So what do you think? Like he hits
the goal.
He hits the high score, and then just like that's his. When a ghost is still on Earth, they have like a mission they have to fulfill. Does he goes up into his light tube? Because either way, that guy's going to snake hell.
I assume that he completes his goal, and then he waits for another human to beat his goal, and then he tries to beat his goal again. That's what I assumed his goal would be.
Okay, pretty good.
I don't feel like it's an unfinished business if somebody completes that goal, and it's like an unfinished business that will never be complete, just with the lingering idea that somebody might beat your record somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd be trapped there for eternity. Right? True.
Yeah.
Technology these days is probably really hard to be a serial killer. I don't know. I don't think you could get to 41 very easily.
I think the forensic technology between 96 and 2006 evolved like exponentially. I don't think you can get away with murder in 2024 at all, unless you're some sort of Batman villain.
Yeah.
Or if you go on a killing spree in a small Appalachian town or something.
Right, kill everyone in the town and then just walk away.
Yeah.
And you have to do it in one night. Yeah.
They don't believe in science there, so it's perfect.
What the hell is DNA?
Is that some sort of God thing?
DNA stands for mind your own business.
We deal with this in our town the way we deal with it in our town, and that's bury the dead. Yeah, so so they have that altercation. He smashes them around in goo form. They get chased around the house with the shotgun stuff that we talked about. That was really well done. Sound design for the shotgun as well. The explosions through the doors were really good, but all of the gun effects in this, as you guys mentioned earlier, when he fights the drill sergeant character and gets the guns from him, he's standing up on top of the car in ghost form, just firing the guns, and it was such a cool visual moment.
Yeah,
I thought. And
the sound is really good too. It's fun. I've been watching a lot of movies with headphones these days just because I like to listen to it real loud, and I find it hard to pay attention to dialogue these days unless I have headphones on. I just can't keep up with it. I need the headphones. I can't. I'm like, what do you say? What? Which is probably because of the fact that I wear headphones so often that my ears are just getting shit. So it's this long road that I'm heading down towards not being able to hear anything ever again.
If I don't have subtitles, I'm fucked pretty much. And I didn't have subtitles for my copy of this, and I was like, "How's that, Junior?" So maybe I should start watching things with headphones as well.
Yeah,
but they do.
But I mean, you do appreciate sound design a lot more when you can hear things that you're not necessarily paying attention to. Like I brought up Dune 2 the other day, and the sound design of that movie is absolutely incredible. Where I'm like, I'm appreciating this movie on levels that I didn't know. Because I already like it, but now I'm liking it even more for just the crunchy sand noises and the weird little bloop, 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 noises of their gadgets and shit that you could barely really hear otherwise. But in this movie, the sort of breadth and depth of the machine gun sound effects is so crunchy and satisfying. We're just I'm like, oh man, it's hitting me in the back of my brain in such a satisfying way. I love it. I recommend.
It's a good little brain scratcher. I was confused about the proximity of the Bradley house to the sanitarium? Were they in the same?
It's all one circle. It's just a circle, and it's real
Okay.
small. Every
'Cause
gunshot can be heard from everywhere in the town. Just nobody's paying attention.
The sort of pre-final battle is that they managed to trap John Bradley in his urn, where that's sort of his origin point. He comes out of his urn from his cremated remains, and they trap him back in there, and they're like, we got to get this to a chapel, we got to get this to a church to have it exorcised. I guess that never happened, so I don't really know what the plan was here, but they go over to the sanitarium, and as they're going through the sanitarium, fucking Frank's ability goes into hyper mode. We've seen it do this a couple times throughout the movie, where he fully just goes back into the era where whatever was happening had happened. But here he goes into full on, like, he's seeing the 1940s version of the sanitarium. He's sort of witnessing the killing spree happen in like real time, while Lucy is like following him around, being like, hey, are you good, man? Like, are you good? What's happening?
Yeah.
And
you can't hear her at that point. Yeah.
Which was pretty crazy. Patricia manages to catch up to them at some point and whacks him in the head so hard that he dies again. So Frank dies twice in this movie, to the point that he can actually go back into his body. So that might be part of his powers. Who knows? Somebody write a comic book about this and let us know the extent of his powers.
Sweet.
30 years later. And they have that final showdown with them. The spirits of Bartlett and Patricia and him, they have like sort of like an on the edge of a cliff fight, but on the edge of like one of those things that takes you up to, I guess, heaven. And Frank gets up there. He sees his two pals who now have modern clothes on, which I thought was a funny little touch.
Yeah, sweet.
And as Patricia and Johnny Bartlett are going back down to Earth, they don't. They go. It all turns into a giant like death snake with snakes inside of it, in this like kind of a CGI mess.
It turns into the hell from Spawn, the movie.
Yeah.
Spawn.
When he's like going down into like the flaming like esophagus. And then we get that big wide shot of
like a loading screen from a Twisted Metal video game. Like, okay.
Yeah, for real.
A little bit rough, Peter.
Yeah. So they're vanquished, and then we basically just have that final scene where they kind of are happily ever after. The house is torn down. We didn't really talk about the house that much because it doesn't really matter, but just as a quick recap, that he was building that house with his wife. This is Frank. This is explained about halfway through the movie. She wanted a garden. He wanted a basketball court. He was a dickhead who drank all the time. He built the basketball court. She got mad at him, and they ended up on the road. They crashed the car. He was found wandering around in the woods. She was found away from the car with a 13 car. But now the house is torn down. He's with Lucy, and the cop comes up, and the cop is sort of like kind of believes. That's kind of the vibe that I got. He's like, we have any more problems with ghosts? Well, I'll dial you up, Mr. Bartlett. Brennan Banner. What the fuck is his name?
Frank. Yeah, I don't remember.
Bannister.
Barco. His name is Johnny Darko.
Johnny Darko. Johnny Darko. No relation. And then it's revealed. So there was another great point that we didn't talk about because it's just one thing that happens. But when Patricia's going nuts with the shotgun, Frank's in between Patricia and the FBI psychopath guy, and he feels like a hole in the floor behind him. I thought this was really goofy because he like ducks out of the way by falling backwards like through a hole in the floor, but falls like 5 stories, like down all the way to the basement.
Yeah.
But when that happens, Patricia blows off the FBI guy's head to reveal his ghost head, which I thought was a really funny little moment.
Yeah.
Which was, some of the stuff in this movie was just played for laughs.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's cool because there are some really tense moments that are kind of frightening. I don't think much of the ghost stuff is really frightening, but a lot of the jokes land and you're like, you're not like, oh, I'm not scared because this is a comedy, and oh, that's not really that funny because this is really scary. It's like sometimes comedy can break the tension of a horror movie, but this is like a weird movie because it's a pretty good balance of both, right? You see the scary things, you believe that it's scary, they're running, and you're not like, whatever. You're like, yeah, get out of there. You believe it.
Watch out for death. He's behind you.
Watch out for death, man. And then the jokes are like worthwhile and don't throw the whole conceit out the window. Like it's still serious, but the jokes are really funny.
It's kind of like when you watch a dramedy and it's more drama. Typically, they're more drama than comedy. This is like a horror comedy that's more horror movie elements than the actual comedy. But the funny parts are just like weird. They're weird, goofy, like, I don't know. I don't even know how to like explain how I feel about the jokes in this movie because some of them are so fucking weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's revealed that as the cop drives away, the FBI guy's in the backseat as a ghost, and Lucy now can see it, and she repeats the same line that Frank says at the beginning, like, sometimes when you have a traumatic enough experience, you're able to, bend the laws of paranormal reality or whatever he says. Yeah. That was not verbatim what he said at all.
Paranormal reality.
And then Don't Fear the Reaper plays.
Yes, an interesting cover of Don't Fear the Reaper, which was more haunting somehow than the original Blue Oyster Cult version. Had that sort of that 90s sound to it. And that is the film.
Yeah, it sounded like the Friends theme.
Yeah. Every song just sounded like it was by the Counting Crows in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
This was like if you mix Mr. Jones and Don't Fear the Reaper. So that is the film known as The Frighteners from 1996, starring Michael J. Fox and various other actors we discussed throughout the film. I guess at this time it is the time of the show when we play a little game. Or no, sorry, the Home Alone of it all.
If you had to pick one, what do you think the Home Alone of it all?
When is the Home Alone of it all?
Can someone please tell me when the Home Alone of it all?
I really gotta know.
When is the Home Alone of it all?
What is the Home Alone of it all?
Now that's the Home Alone of it all.
So, Mark, do you remember what the Home Alone of it all is from your first time on the show?
No.
It's essentially the point of the movie.
I don't know.
So in the film Home Alone, there's a point in the movie where Kevin McAllister slaps down the blueprint and we see where he's going to place all of his traps. He proceeds to place all of the traps. And as a kid, a lot of us were just there to see sort of that segment of the movie. Over the years of doing the show, we've been doing this segment. We've sort of also determined it could literally just be the third act, or it could be sort of a segment of the movie you were just there to see.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, what's your Home Alone of it all for the Frighteners?
Well, I didn't really have one. Like, I didn't really have an expectation going into this movie because I knew it was Michael J. Fox, ghosts, something like that. So if it's kind of like a retrospective one, what would it be? What did I really want to see? Yeah, I guess for me it was the fight with the Reaper. I think, like, I really wanted that Reaper thing to die somehow, and the way we got it was fun and whatever. But it wasn't like a big plan or anything. Maybe I'm thinking about it too much. But yeah, I guess it was just like ghost antics in general, like having the ghosts be able to do things and how that sort of world works, and them like being crushed by cars and then being able to stand back up. Like, yeah, that was the little kid in me was like, this is so fun. They're like getting hurt, but it's okay. Like, that's great.
Ghost shenanigans. They're like Looney Tunes.
That's right. They're cartoons, man.
Yeah, that's very cartoony. Cool. Thank you. How about you, Steve?
For me, it's when the Grim Reaper comes out of the mirror in the restaurant. That is the Home Alone of it all for me, because I was waiting for the reveal of death in more than carpet form, and I was looking forward to it, and I couldn't remember when it happens, but it clicked like just before it happened. I was like, oh, wait, doesn't he come through the mirror or something and kill this fucking guy? And then it happened, and I was like, yes, I remember. So I was excited that I remembered something before it happened that was so vividly accurate.
I think for me now, it would be the moment where he goes to the afterlife for the first time. Like I liked that segment because it kind of like it just becomes like a kind of like a fantasy sci-fi kind of a thing, or more fantasy. But going into it, I thought the bit of him going to houses and like booby trapping them with the ghosts to do his paranormal scam, I thought that was a bigger part of the movie from remembering it from when I was a kid. So traditionally it would have been that element based off that video game I was talking about earlier, starring Poltergeist. That was a stupid funny pun. But now it's absolute. What?
I just, for some reason, I was thinking about like a haunted house full of drag queens, and there was a poltergeist in it, and it was like a gay poltergeist. And
That's
it would be
fun.
like,
we like that. That's great.
I was trying to elaborate on the joke in my head, and I couldn't think of anything funny. And then I was just like, poltergeist. That's funny.
Good enough. Yeah.
We're like poltergeist. Sorry. But yeah, I think now it would be I really like the section where he becomes a ghost and learns the rules of being a ghost for the first time.
Yeah, that was fun.
Let's play a little game.
It's time to play Guess the MPAA.
It's not going. There we go.
Hello and welcome to the #1 game show in all of history. My name is Jack Poltergeist, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Stephen R. Waters, who of course is going to explain it this week because he always gives me a hard time because I can't explain it succinctly. So Steve, why don't you tell the rules?
You're asking me to explain the MPAA game? Well,
Yes.
sure, Jack Poltergeist, if that is your real name. Basically, the rules of the game are simple. We, as contestants, need to guess a number between 000 and 999. This 3-digit number is, of course, the last 3 digits of a 5-digit MPAA rating score. We only have to guess 3 because guessing 5 would be insane. So let's try and do it. You're first, Mark. Guess the last 3 numbers of the MPAA.
I will tell you the first 2 digits, which absolutely do not matter, but it's 34.
So it's going to be 4, 6, 7.
Higher.
Oh.
8, 88.
Lower.
6, 9, 9.
Lower. Steven.
600.
Higher. Final guess. Mark.
633.
Final guess, Steve. 34. Higher.
651. Damn it!
You're gonna kick yourself. No, that's the fucking. I had another buzzer for it not being right, and it was the most horrifying sound. So I picked this. No, incorrect.
The other one sent me into a rage every week. I was like, that's one of those things that triggers something inside me that makes me really mad.
Yes.
What's the number, Jason? What's the number?
It's 34656.
Oh!
The MPAA, everyone. The MPAA. Wow.
Wow.
Wow. And before we go into our our little outro plugs, blah blah blah, let's talk about our final thoughts.
It's time for our final thoughts.
Wow.
Wow. And just like the at the start, Mark, we let our guests go first. So hit us with your final thoughts. And if you have a rating, please hit us with your rating, whether it be, out of 5 or out of 10 or some nonsense, non sequitur joke rating.
So before I give just a rating, this movie was surprisingly good. I enjoyed the way that the movie was written, and there's some fun bits that now are. I don't really take the movie too seriously, but it was more fun than some regular like horror schlocky kind of movie. This was like carefully. It's a movie made by people who love movies, I think, and you can feel that throughout. Yeah, it knows what it is. It feels like it's funny. It's got sort of an irreverent kind of sense of humor, and it's fun and interesting. And it's not easy to tease out the answers throughout the movie. Like, it's not very obvious. So I really enjoyed this movie. I think it's a good movie, and I'll definitely watch it again. I probably wouldn't put it on maybe too seriously, but would put it on if something else was happening and just watch through it. I give it 5 quarts of ectoplasm out of 5.
Whoa, that's a lot of ectoplasm.
Yeah. With your vitamins and minerals.
Vitamin B for Boo. Isn't there a vitamin B joke at some point in this movie? I remember somebody saying, "I need vitamin."
Oh yeah, it's Buddy, it's Ray, it's the dead husband or whatever his name is, Roy.
Right. He's like, I'm
like,
freaking out.
Oh yeah, when he's
taking vitamins anymore or whatever.
Yeah.
You can't drink, you can't eat, you can't work out. He's like, I gotta do some squats. Yeah.
And then he says, and I have this written down, can you at least give me a ride so I don't miss my funeral?
Right.
Awesome.
And then he's crying at his own funeral.
Yeah.
My final thoughts on this movie are that I am glad that I watched it and was so spooked about it when I was as young as I did, because it was one of the ones that kind of like edged me towards bravery and watching these types of movies where you're scared of them for not really a real reason, just the idea of being scared of them scared you. And I know for a fact that I didn't get through this movie in one fell swoop. I had to like watch it in chunks and switch the channel. In my room, I didn't have a remote for my TV. I had a box on top of it, and I would have the TV was on a wheelie thing, and I'd put it right next to my bed, and I would have to like press the button on top of the TV to change the channel. I'd be like, oh God, put it on the cartoon channel now. But revisiting this years later, I know I've seen it again in between then and now, but I don't have a definitive moment of seeing it. I did appreciate it a lot more, and it is really fun to watch someone like Peter Jackson's career that is, shifted so dramatically into a specific direction, but still be able to see influences and echoes of his previous works in his newest works in such a strong and identifying way, where you can watch this movie and compare it to something like Lord of the Rings and see the framework of where they line up in terms of just like sensibility and filmmaking. And it's really fun and cool. And I'm glad that he can take the things that he learned in making sort of like schlocky horror movies in his early career and still utilize those in something like Lord of the Rings. It's interesting. It's cool. I love the world building in this. When I got in it, it felt like a fully developed idea, even though it is very cartoonish and childlike in a certain way. It felt like you're stepping into a world that had a lot of thought put into it, and it wasn't just like, let's slap it around a little bit and see what happens. It's like, no, let's make some rules here and try to stick to them as much as we can. I always appreciate a good world build, and this is sort of a world that they created that I would be interested in revisiting and seeing expanded upon. I don't think it ever was in any way, but I don't know. It's fun. It's a fun world I'd like to jump back into. Similar to like the Beetlejuice universe, or something like Ghostbusters, where it's like they put some thought into this, and they could probably do more. If I had to give this movie a rating, I would give this movie a a very well-built, practical Grim Reaper sculpture that should have been in this movie that never was. And I find that disappointing, but the end result is pretty good still. It's still pretty good. That's my rating. Oh, thanks. Thanks for clapping for me, guys. Wow. I didn't even press the button. It just did it on its own. Oh my God. Spooky bells.
When I give the thumbs up, it's the
Hell's
sound of clapping.
bells.
Hell's bells. Remember the movie last night? All right. I enjoyed this, which is pretty obvious. It was interesting and bombastic, colorful take on ghosts in the afterlife. I think the movie was ahead of its time in the amount of CGI that it's used. But for some reason, despite it looking dated, it didn't take me out of it too badly. I think if this was like remade today or made again today, it could be something special. As we were discussing at the beginning of the show, I think it would be a great TV series where he like has to help a different ghost every week or something like that. Have sort of a fun what?
I was laughing at the idea of Michael J.
It's great.
Fox
Yeah, it's great.
having to help a new ghost every week. You're like,
Yeah.
hey, what's your problem? Oh,
What's
God.
your friggin' problem this week?
How do I get you to heaven or hell?
It's basically it'd be like a weird mystery show on like HBO Max or something where it's just over the top. I think that it could be a cool idea to come back as fully practical also, because obviously Peter Jackson was probably heartbroken that he had to use CGI so much in this during a time where CGI just wasn't there for the most part. Very new concept.
Yeah, it was also very rushed. Like as I talked about earlier, it was super rushed. They didn't have enough money for the budget, and they had to hire freelancers and pad the budget to be able to do it. So I think if they had maybe like an extra year, they probably could have had it look like something really special, and it probably would have improved the box office return. But
for sure, the Grim Reaper looked like kind of reminded me of those old YTV interstitials that played late at night. There was probably 5 or 6 of them, and they had like the weird little CGI, like they were like little CGI music videos that kind of remind me of the jankiness of that.
Right.
But you're right. I think if there was more money and time put in, it could have been a bit better. And it's disappointing that this movie didn't do better, because I think a sequel could have been cool, where there's now 2 people that can see ghosts and they go from town to town helping a new ghost every week.
Yeah, it's like the Conjuring movies or whatever with Patrick Wilson.
Yeah, I've only seen the first one, but is that what happens? He goes and helps a new.
I don't even know if it's
Conjuring
the Conjuring movies. I just know that him and what's her name from the Bates Motel, they're like a married couple, and they go around solving ghost mysteries.
See, that's fun. That's some fun stuff.
Yeah.
I give this film a 3.6 out of 5. I also give this film a glowing ghost that gets turned modern in the afterlife.
Whoa.
Remember how their clothes were different when they were up in the afterlife?
New wardrobe.
I remember.
Fresh
I remember.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Whoopsie. Sorry, wrong. I hit the Chucky laugh instead of the bell.
That's fine. Chucky's here. He's with us. And before we get out of here, we're getting this show's getting tighter, and I like it. This was a really good amount of time to talk about this particular film. I think we managed to cover all our bases. So thank you, Mark, for being on again. Before we get out of here, do you have anything you would like to promote or plug?
The film that I've been sort of plugging over and over is out on I think Tubi is like the best way to watch it. It's called Wolves. It's a slow burn thriller, suspenseful, and I think it's a good movie. It's one that we could do on this show if you wanted. But I recommend everybody watch it, especially on Tubi, because it happens to be free. But we were very lucky to get it on a bunch of different platforms. Apple TV Plus, Google Play, and Amazon Prime. yeah, all picked it up. So we're pretty
wow.
proud of that. And on the back of that sort of success, we're working on me and the same folks are working on another movie that maybe we shoot in the fall, maybe we shoot in the spring, who knows? But that's still in the works. So that's coming up. Yeah. Wolves feature film at Instagram is where you can find updates on that movie. But otherwise, head to Tubi and search Wolves. You'll watch a movie with this face for, I think it's an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes. So if you like what you see, you'll see more of it. Yeah, that's my plug.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, thank you again for being on. We'll have you back soon. I'm going to watch that soon, and I'll let you know what I think, and we'll have you back on potentially to talk about it. Me and Steve will get the vibe of what it is and maybe build a month around it.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Wolf Month.
Wolf Month.
Movies with wolves in the title. You'll find there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's so many.
Yeah.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you. How about you, Steve? What do you got? What's boiling over for you?
I am still doing a bunch of voice work for a ton of different channels. If you want to check those out, Darth Theorist, Arcane Archives, Ready Set Disaster, a bunch of other ones. I'm gonna forget all of them, but yeah, things are growing. They're doing well, and actually, I just got another one today where I'm gonna be doing meditative speaking.
Oh my god.
You're
like 2 steps away from ASMR, my guy.
Yeah. Just dive right in, man.
Should be interesting. I've been told I have a soothing voice and a creepy voice, so we'll find out which one I go with for the meditation
There's a fine line you got to
now do a downward dog.
Oh God. Now do an upward dog. Oh God. I don't want the people who hired me to hear this. Delete. How do I get rid of this? Chucky, help me out.
Oh boy.
All right. Yeah, that's what I got.
Is that everything for you?
No one else.
I'm the one who promotes this show because I don't really have anything else going on. You can find us each and every week here on Twitch or YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're watching us. This is a rare situation where we are broadcasting on a Monday, but I will post this episode on social media tomorrow, Tuesday, July 30th. Nope, July 30th. You just witnessed my brain like change in real time looking at a date. Anyway, normally we broadcast live on Twitch and YouTube and Facebook each and every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We are moving into our Crazy Cryptids month starting this week. So if you follow the show and you're watching this in the future, well, it's already happened. But if you're watching this tonight or the rest of this week, you'll see a promotion for that start to go up. I also announced for a local wrestling promotion here in Toronto called Super Kicked, and you can find the last like 4 or 5 years of shows at youtube.com/superkicked and pretty much at Superkicked on all social media. And that's the other thing that I do. You can also find me on TikTok at Important Influencer, where I make videos sometimes. And that's pretty much it. So now that that's all out of the way, Steve, I'll get the outros here. But there is just one question that needs to be asked each and every week, and I'm stalling because I need to find the. Do we have the spooky intro on here? I don't think we do. I think we just have the regular intro.
No, we don't.
Okay, Mark, there's one question that needs to be asked, and is asked each and every week here on this particular podcast. Could you ask that question, please?
Hey, did you see this one?
Ah, yes. You got it on the first try this time.
Oh, man. I was like, oh, God, it's something to do with the title. What is it? Is it just the title? Oh, he's asking me if it's a question. Oh, the title is a question. Go for it.
Beam up some Star Trek content with Live Long and Podcast. Tune in to X-Rated, the X-Men animated review show. Artistic interviews with graphic histories. A roundtable movie discussion with Hey, did you see this one? And movie reviews with Hold Up, a movie podcast. And while you're at it, spin a few records with Eamon on Track. Watch us duke it out on trivial debates. And let's chat about TV with the Super Mater Brothers. It's all here on the United Federation of Podcasts.